Thanks for listening to the latest Beyond the Back Four podcast, available on YouTube and all podcast platforms. Subscribe now so you don't miss a single episode.
Welcome to Beyond the Back Four, where we are going beyond the weekend's football, and what a weekend it was. Manchester United made it 3 wins in a row, with Ruben Amorim's side looking confident and comfortable for the first time possibly ever after beating Kieran Maguire's Brighton 4-2. Chelsea lost, Manchester City lost, Liverpool lost, Arsenal win again to maintain their title charge. We're going to talk about all of it and more. I'm joined by Graeme Bailey and Kieran Maguire. If you are watching this on YouTube, then subscribe, because we're pushing to 1,000 subscribers before Christmas. That would be really nice. Let's get straight into it. Kieran, what did you think of your team?
I thought they were very shabby. I think the only positive, I was trying to negotiate whether I could get plenty of assists from Brighton players for Manchester United goals, given their propensity to give the ball away. But sadly, apparently that's not part of the rules. Yet Brighton were poor, Manchester United were slightly better and deserved to win the match.
Danny Welbeck kept up his incredible record, though, and scored a wonderful free kick.
Yes, which is Brighton's 6th goal from a free kick in 9 seasons in the Premier League. So it's certainly something they need to work at. Danny is wonderful. I think there was a 5 minutes of squeaky bum time when Brighton scored the second, but it would not have been a fair result if they'd picked up a point.
I will admit that I don't know the ins and outs of all the free kick records, but that seems absolutely dreadful. Graeme, talk to us about what's changed at Manchester United. Why are we seeing a team that went from sort of chaos to what suddenly looks like controlled and organised and is winning games?
Well, obviously it started in the summer. Jason Wilcox and the hierarchy doing their job and doing it well. You know, everyone's talking about Ruben Amorim picking out players. He didn't do that. It's not a patriarchal system anymore at Manchester United under Sir Alex as it was. But like with many clubs now, it's very rare to find that sort of figurehead choosing the players. And the players that were brought in were really good Premier League performers. Brilliant Premier League performers. Matheus Cunha and Brian Mbeumo. Really clever signings. And when you get 2 players like that who are adept at the Premier League level, who are going to run themselves into ground fear and are full of skill and talent, it was always going to bring something extra to that United team, Sam. But let's not take anything away from Ruben Amorim. The way he's got them fitted in there, Sesko came in and did really well up top. I think the players are clearly on board with what he's trying to do now. I love Amad playing at that attacking wing-back position. And we saw Casemiro have one of his few good games, Sam. And when he does make a huge difference, doesn't he, when he gets it ticking along. And I will say, I thought Brighton were dreadful. I'm not a huge fan of having Hertzer. I think he's glorifying in Brighton's success rather than his own success. I think he's really average as a coach, personally. But you can only beat what's put in front of you. And United did that. And the keeper was okay. We were talking there about Danny Welbeck's free kick. I thought the keeper was at fault for that. I think he should have had it. It was not in the corner. It was very much central. And I think he got off the hook with that one, personally. But I said, Brighton huffed and puffed. I thought the Kodioglu was really good, the Turkish boy, who actually I think would be, on a separate note, I think he'd be a really good fit for United system, actually. But anyway, United did what they had to do, and I thought they were very impressive. So we're quick to condemn them when they're not very good. So let's praise them when they are, and I thought they were very good.
Yeah, very nice. I agree with you on the free kick as well. Would you expect Premier League level goalkeepers to just, it sounds really ridiculous, but just save those?
I think when it's centrally like it was clearly well hit. But when it's in the middle of the goal, like where you would expect someone his size as well. He's a good 6'5", 6'6", isn't he? It ain't just one big leap and he'd be there. I'm not, obviously it was a 4-2 win, so we can't be too down on him, can we? As long as he doesn't make a habit of it. It was just, it helps gloss over. It helps gloss over those goalkeeping errors, can't you, Sam? When you have a performance like that, you're not too fussed.
That's right. Kieran, so obviously Manchester United now very much in the title race. In terms of the money they've spent, I thought that would get you, Graeme. In terms of the money that the club have spent, and the money that they have to spend, and the 3-year rolling PSR, uh, economy at United. Where does their league finish impact their planning for this season? How important is it that they are in, say, the Champions League or not in the Champions League?
Champions League is critical for a club of the stature of Manchester United, not only from participation in the competition itself. You're going to pick up a minimum of £40 million in prize money. Realistically, you're probably looking at another 6 to 7 million in terms of gate receipts, and you've got 4 fixtures guaranteed. Potentially, you could be looking at 7 or 8. There'll be bonuses from sponsors. Adidas will give you an extra £10 million. So everything adds up, and you're looking potentially at a good run in the Champions League. £150 million could be 200 if they start to do it on a more regular basis, and that money flows through into the transfer kitty. Non-participation, as we've seen this season, didn't stop the club from spending money, but I think some people are looking at the levels of debt. Not only do they have a substantial loan, they've also taken out a big overdraft, and they also owe the thick end of £400 million in unpaid transfer fees, which means that when it comes to the January window, when it comes to the window in the summer of 2026, the first thing that Manchester United have to do is to pay off the instalments on old transfers before they can start to look at the new ones. Now, if you've got the benefit of Champions League, winning the title is for the fans. It's top 5. Yeah, realistically, I think that the Premier League will have 5 clubs in the Champions League, probably at least 8 years out of 10 under the new UEFA rules going forward. So it's a case of getting into that top 5 and then reaping the rewards, and that creates a virtuous circle.
Just there's a slight change of subject, but Graeme, do you like that? Do you like the idea of 5 teams from England being in the Champions League? It's consistently.
Provided one's not Sunderland.
Well said, Kieran. Yeah, and Newcastle as well. I was actually the Sunderland thing. My son, who's very much into fantasy football now, is determined to get Sunderland players into our team. So I did have to explain to him the reason we don't have any Newcastle players is the same reason we won't have any Sunderland players in. But it's getting quite hard not to have them in. I think with this new, actually with the new league system in the Champions League, I think it becomes a bit more bearable. It's probably because we've been so used to it now. You know, we can remember the days of 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's quite nice to have as many as we can in there, really. I guess I've come full circle. You know, I was always only the champions in the Champions League back in the day, but now, yeah, more the merrier, really. And when Middlesbrough are back in there, I'll be hoping we get more in, because then it'll make it easier for us to return to Europe.
Okay, so Mark Clattenburg is also with us. So he's here to talk through the Dorgu foul, whether or not that should have been a red card, and all of the free kick confusion that occurred at Old Trafford.
I think it was Jan Paul van Heck making a challenge on Amad Diallo inside the penalty area, and I was surprised Anthony Taylor, the referee, who's very experienced, didn't award this as a penalty kick. It's a clear trip, and I think this is where maybe Anthony Taylor's seniority within the group, the VAR might not have wanted to certainly help to interfere in Anthony Taylor's original decision, but this is a decision that Anthony Taylor clearly got wrong, in my opinion. It was a clear penalty kick for a trip, and I believe that Manchester United should have received certainly a penalty kick and VAR intervention, because to talk about clear and obvious errors, I think most referees would see that as a penalty kick, and surprised VAR didn't recommend. We also had the big talking point of Dorgu, who brings down the Brighton forward. There can be an argument of a denying of an obvious goal scoring opportunity, but I think the Brighton player, just before he's fouled, pushes the ball too far. And then there is a doubt, can the goalkeeper get to the ball before the Brighton forward? I believe he can. And therefore, that takes away the denying of an obvious goal scoring opportunity. So that clears the red cards situation up. And I think, you know, once Anthony Taylor gets the foul, awards the foul, then certainly the yellow card would come out. There can be an argument about the position of the ball. I've looked at it many times. My first impression was probably that the position of the free kick was maybe 10 metres further up the field of play, which gave Brighton an advantage to have a better shot at goal. But it'll be an argument and very subjective when I've looked at it again. There may be a contact, certainly, closer to the penalty area, and that's what might have made him fall down. Certainly there was a contact well before, but there may be a secondary contact, and that's where probably Anthony Taylor, because that's where the Brighton player falls, that's where he believes that the foul happened. And again, it's the referee's opinion where that foul took place. If he'd awarded the foul further back, maybe 10 metres further back, nobody would have had any complaints. But I can also understand where the free kick was taken after really studying to see where that contact was made. You can certainly argue that there might have been a second contact further up, which is why the free kick was taken from the position it was. So there was certainly some talking points. I believe, Anthony Taylor, certainly not an easy game, an exciting game to referee. But there was one or two moments where probably on hindsight and certainly looking back at his game the next day, he will realise that he's probably made one or two mistakes.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. I suppose, Kieran, from your perspective, those are decisions that as a fan, they didn't necessarily impact the result. Maybe United should have had a penalty, pretty relaxed about Dorgu being sent off or not. What do you think?
I'm never one to blame referees for victories or defeats because they give what they see. I thought it was potentially a penalty, probably worth a second look, and it wouldn't make a difference to the result unless Brighton had got a third, and in which case you can understand Manchester United fans would have been fairly angry. It's never easy. I mean, it's always fascinating to hear Mark's analysis through through his experience, and even somebody as experienced as Anthony Taylor, who for me is our best referee, along with Michael Oliver by a long, long way. Getting every decision right, it can never be done.
It is great to get Mark's analysis. I also really like the different locations in his house he does this from. It's like a really slow reveal of through the keyhole. Graeme, what next for Manchester United? There's now a squad that looks consistent, is performing, but are there players that need to go? Are there players that need to come? What's the plans? Do you know?
Yeah, obviously it's very different in terms of January and the summer. We know come the summer, Casemiro's out of contract and there's going to be changes at the back. Kieran Maguire's out of contract. Will he stay? Will Luke Shaw stay? Will Martinez stay? There's going to be a lot of things change in the summer, but the squad itself won't change massively. It's being moulded to what Ruben Amorim wants. I think when we come to January, Sam, obviously this other CDM comes into play. And obviously we know who United like, the Whartons, Beliebers, Elliot Andersons, but they're long-term ambitions, really. I think there's a couple of, as I alluded to before, when Cunha and Mbeumo came in, proven Premier League performers. I think we might see that again in January. I think the two I'd keep an eye on at the moment from what I'm hearing, maybe like even short-term deals or attainable, Conor Gallagher and Ruben Neves. Conor Gallagher, his situation at Atletico Madrid isn't great, and he would be slotted into the system perfectly, you would think, in the Amorim style. And then there's Ruben Neves, who is out of contract at Al Hilal. I always get these Saudi Arabian, the top four mixed up, but I think he's at Al Hilal. He's been, I'm told from Saudi sources, he's been the best import, according to some, in that whole league. He's been fantastic, and we know he's a good player, only 28. We know he's been on United's radar again. So I keep an eye on Ruben Neves as well, from what I'm hearing. But I think they will bring another CDM in. And obviously, in terms of exits, if Ruben Amorim stays, Kobbie Mainoo's future is really up in the air. United are briefing that Kobbie Mainoo will not be allowed to leave in January. That is what they're saying at this point. If a Gallagher or Neves or someone of that ilk comes in, will Mainoo still not be allowed out? I'm not so sure. He may be. But then we've got other fringe players like Joshua Zirkzee. He's a name to watch because United love him as a player. They like his personality, like his endeavour, his work ethic. Not so much his defending from corners, as we saw at the weekend. But he's one who I think they will allow out, Sam. He's got his World Cup in mind. Ronald Koeman's already told him he has to play. And he's got a lot of suitors, Zirkzee. A lot of clubs back in Italy. There's clubs in France, Germany. There's a few in England as well. The Evertons this world, West Hams. So I think Zirkzee will be allowed out purely to maintain his World Cup ambitions.
Okay, thank you very much. Fun fact for you, that fixture, Manchester United-Brighton, is the fixture with the most games played without a draw occurring ever in Premier League history. 9 wins for United, 8 for Brighton, which means maths fans like him would have worked out that before the game at the weekend, the game that had been played the most times without a draw was level on 8 wins apiece, which in itself is a draw. Maths. Right, let's talk about Chelsea. Kieran, Chelsea lost again. We've talked a lot about Chelsea on this podcast, and the two of you had an excellent debate about whether or not they could or couldn't win the league with Robert Sanchez in goal. But as it stands, Enzo Maresca described the defeat as a step backwards. This Chelsea side seems, and they're the youngest squad in the league, but very inconsistent, and the results are fairly volatile. Do you think there will ever be a moment of concern from those above? Obviously, the financial project is much bigger than the individual games, but does there come a point where it's too much?
I think as far as the owners are concerned, their private equity style of nurturing assets and flogging them off has been very successful. Their ambition, I think probably the same this season as that of Manchester United, is qualify for the Champions League and generate the revenues from that. The non-acquisition of a front of shirt sponsor, although it looks like that could be resolved very quickly, would have been a big issue, I think, for most clubs. But Chelsea are a weird, and I would never say anything. I wouldn't use the word wonderful for Chelsea because it is personal as far as I'm concerned. But they are very good at what they set out to do, which is to use young men as commodities and trade them very successfully. Provided that continues, I don't think that the owners get... Private equity doesn't give a damn about the results. It's not interested in trophies unless it brings additional financial rewards. It's more concerned about the player trading model. And yes, the results are inconsistent. Yeah, that's twice in a row that they've lost at home against modest sides. Let's be honest, but they'll probably still win enough themselves to get over the line because who are the top 5 going to be? I think we can say that Liverpool, Arsenal, and Manchester City. And I know Liverpool are having a poor form, but I think that's just a dip. I think those certainly. Manchester City and Arsenal are certainties. Liverpool, I've got at 95%. And then it's a bit of a bun fight. Spurs are doing well, but they don't seem to have won the fans over, although that's difficult. But as much as it's exciting for Bournemouth and Sunderland, I think it's fair to say that we're better off judging them in February and March. Chelsea are probably looking at one of those two other spaces as they did last season.
More than fair. Graeme, what are you hearing about Chelsea? Do you think this is a situation where it is a young squad, it is a relatively changed squad, so these results will happen? Or is there a deeper unrest?
No, there's not a deeper unrest. They really trust Enzo Maresca, the hierarchy. They like what he's doing. And to be fair, he's having a club with, in the central defence at the moment. Yes, he's not picking Fofana, which clearly he has reasons behind. But, Trevor Chalobah, Tosin, they're really not up to the level that Chelsea want to be at, and we saw that at the weekend. Akimpong, the young lad, he's by far the best of their central defenders at the moment. So when Colwill got injured, we all thought, Maresca demanding a centre-half, he's never happy. But he really knew what he was talking about. When Colwill got injured, he really came out and said, quite a rare thing for him to come out and break his silence. He wanted a centre-half, and he was really proven correct in that. And yeah, I think he's one of his coaches. I think there's a few at the weekend who made a few too many changes. João Pedro isn't firing at the moment, and when you've lost Liam Delap, you can see that's why he's brought Mark Gui in to try and do something. So again, it's the areas we did pinpoint before the start of the season: the centre forward department, centre half, and the goalkeeper. There's still areas that Chelsea need to improve on, and we did pick those out. To be fair to us on the show, so I don't think there's a massive worry. I think they're very happy with Maresca's management of this squad and how it is. It's not an easy job there, as we know. But I think they are, from what I'm hearing, they're very happy with the way he's doing it.
On the flip side, do you think the squad are happy with his management?
I do hear that hierarchy don't get involved, which is a real positive. They don't micromanage this. They don't, from what I'm told, they're not tapping him on the shoulder and say, I think Estevao should start today. So Todd Boehly isn't doing that, from what I'm told. But yeah, if you're joining a squad where when you turn up at Stamford Bridge, it's 2 players for every position. So you've got to accept that. It's one of those things, and you've got to back yourself. So that's where it is at Chelsea. If you're good enough, you play every week. Look at Caicedo and Fernandes. Two of the best in the world, and they're playing every week because they're good enough and they're showing it.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, let's talk about Liverpool. Kieran just said, Graeme, that this Liverpool team will be, he's confident, one of those teams that are there or thereabouts coming into the season, that this is maybe a dip. But I just want to throw to you something that might suggest a deeper problem. Did you see Konaté's running for Sade's goal, where he just sort of gives up right at the last moment, where if that had been saved and there'd been a rebound, he didn't put himself in a position to continue the fight, as it were.
I thought it was a bit nonsensical. What do you want him to continue running hard and go through the back of him and get sent off? What do you want Konaté to do at that point? It wasn't his fault. It's the midfield allowing that ball to come through to them. Again, I think Konaté has been used as a scapegoat all season, but Liverpool fans know it's not him. If it was that easy, I thought Liverpool's midfield was really poor. The whole performance was really poor. And yeah, I agree with Kieran completely. I'd be putting all my money, what little there is of it, on them finishing top 4. But this title push, is it going to be like last season where Arsenal are clearly the best team in it? Are the other teams going to trip up and just let them have it? It seems to be that's how it's playing out. But Liverpool need to correct this. They really do. This new system, it's really hard fitting so many new players into a team, but we've seen what Sunderland have done. They've eight new players in their team, and they're doing it pretty well. But yeah, the pressure's getting to him. It's going to be fascinating to see how Arne Slot reacts to this. It's the first real dip, the first hole he's got to dig himself out in English football since he's arrived. He hasn't had to cope with this, so it's going to be fascinating how he does. I think he will. I think they're too good not to. But yeah, they need a few players to step up here, not just Konaté.
Now, Kieran, I know you don't think this will happen, but what happens to their spreadsheets if Liverpool do miss out on the Champions League places, given the money that they've invested this summer?
They've got an awful lot of leeway, Liverpool, because FSG run actually quite a conservative ship, so that they've not incurred huge losses. So 1 year out of the Premier League, 1 year out of the Champions League is something which they can deal with easily. 2 years is imperfect. If it gets to 3, I think you've then got a problem. And I think we're a long way off that. Yeah, the recent expansion of Anfield, the new deal with Adidas, I suspect there's going to be a renewal of the deal with Standard Chartered as well. They will prime the pump very well as far as the money coming into the club is concerned. Champions League participation, it's a bit like one of those things when you're applying for a job. It's in the desirable but not essential, simply because Liverpool are such a well-run club on other issues that they can survive without it, certainly for 1 year. It's more of an issue of attracting players. Players want to be playing in the Champions League, especially off the back of a World Cup summer, whereby I think Champions League 26-27 will be fascinating.
For a bit of context, the only times in history that a reigning Premier League champion has lost 4 times in a row was Manchester City last season, when they had their mad bit of a campaign and their season sort of fell off the rails. Liverpool, the last time they won the league, when in their second season, same sort of thing happened. And then the team before that were Leicester City. And those are the only times that a reigning Premier League champion has lost. None of those were good seasons for those teams particularly.
You've never been happier, Sam, on this podcast. I know you've turned up in your Liverpool top today, but you've never been a Manchester United win, Liverpool, 4 in a row. You've never been happier, Sam.
It was a good weekend, wasn't it? Everyone thought it was a good weekend for football. Everybody's from the neutral perspective. My role on this podcast is wildly neutral. And we all thought it was a good weekend of football, all of us. It all seemed to work. Tell you what, it was a wild game from a referee's perspective, including the referees substituting themselves. Let's get Mark in.
It was an unusual situation where the referee, Simon Hooper, was replaced by Tim Robinson during the game for an injury that, unfortunately, Simon Hooper, an injury that he couldn't certainly carry on. It's really difficult as a fourth official, because your role as a fourth official, you're more dealing with the managers and the abuse that you're getting from the technical areas, and having that mindset to switch to become the referee is a really difficult one, and because it very rare happens, so you're not really mentally ready for that situation because it's just a rare moment. But certainly when it happens, Tim Robinson needed to warm up. That's one of the most important things because Tim Robinson is the last resort as a referee because the two assistants are specialist assistant referees and not referees anymore. So the last recognised person would be Tim Robinson. So what you don't want is to have an injury immediately after Tim has entered the field of play, because people say, well, come on, why is the game getting delayed? But he needed to warm up correctly and be ready for the first moments of his game. So this was a moment. It's happened to me once before. I was an assistant referee, and assistant referees replaced the referee, and I was assistant referee at Barrow and Rushden and Diamonds. Rushden and Diamonds had just drawn with Leeds in the FA Cup, so they were going to play an important replay. So there was a lot of focus on the game. I was a young referee, an assistant referee, and I was asked to replace Clive Oliver, Michael Oliver's father, because he got injured after maybe 20 minutes of the game, and it was strange coming in. But what made my life easy was the first challenge was a clear yellow card, so it was one of them where I didn't have to worry. It was just so clear, and that set the tone that no players were going to go and commit these type of fouls because I was going to punish them, and it made me game certainly easier. But it's not easy going in. You would prefer to be the main referee, and certainly it's not nice when a referee gets injured. But there was also a couple of big talking points in the game. Could have Cody Gakpo received a penalty kick. I've analysed this many times. Nathan Collins goes to make a challenge for the ball, and his leg is already planted. And I believe what Cody Gakpo does, he anticipates the contact. And while he anticipates the contact, Nathan Collins' leg doesn't move a second movement towards Gakpo's leg. And because he anticipates the contact, he jumps up. And as he jumps up, his arms go above his head. And that's normally one of the signs that referees are looking at. If a player naturally falls, he would automatically put his arms out to break the fall because he's not expecting to fall. Very rare you see a situation where a player deliberately puts his hands in the air to break his fall. So therefore, this is one of the signs that referees look at if a player's certainly anticipating contact and trying to win a penalty kick. So sometimes referees don't get the praise they should. I think this is a very, very good decision. You'll have Liverpool fans complaining, of course. But for me, referees get a lot of criticism. But this was a very good decision that you could analyse what had happened and certainly didn't fall for the actions of Gakpo by trying to win his team a penalty kick. So this time, certainly referees getting the right call. There was another situation where Van Dijk certainly makes a clear challenge on the edge of the penalty area. It's a clear foul. And because the foul happens just on the line is a part of the penalty area. So therefore, it was well within the rights for the referee to award the penalty kick. So this one was a little bit more easier because of the line, but because that line is a part of the penalty area, it would certainly always be given as a penalty kick.
That's a sort of foul, just from obviously Liverpool are not my team, but I'd have still been furious if that had been given as a penalty. Right, because you two spent so long talking about United challenging for the title, we're running out of time. So we need to get to the team that are actually top of the league, which is Arsenal. They have scored more goals from set pieces than any other side in the league with 11 now. They're just winning games. Graeme, is this what some are calling grown-up football?
Yeah, it's a sign of just how strong the squad is as well. It's what they were preparing for the whole summer. No matter who plays, they really are so strong. And Eze scored a wonderful goal. Obviously, the modern day thing I'm not celebrating, which actually I didn't mind in this regard because it's still a very fresh wound, isn't it, for Palace fans with Eze leaving. But as we said before, their decision to keep Trossard, the three, Eze going in there, replacing Odegaard in the midfield, playing a slightly deeper role. Gyökeres, I thought, had a fine game, actually, the way he moves defenders around. I think people really don't, with him, he really does add an extra element to Arsenal. I think it's been a huge factor for them. But people staying fit, Calafiori and Timber staying fit, them two fullbacks, I think they're not the unsung heroes of this team, but they are really, really good. Them two, I think they really are fabulous. And yeah, just I said, yeah, grown up decisions as well. Going decisions, keeping Trossard and Arteta, everything now. It's really opening up for Arsenal now. There's a clear lane in front of them to go and get this title, and it's there to be had for them.
Well, you mentioned the fullbacks. Not everyone, but people are talking about Julian Timber now and whether or not he is the best fullback in the league. He was £34 million. Kieran, is that a good example of how Arsenal actually, despite finishing second, they've spent their money well and they have consistently just improved their squad year after year?
Yes, it's a horrible phrase, but it's marginal gains. And I think Arsenal have a strategy. It's a long-term strategy. I don't see a weakness in the starting 11 every time I look at them. And I don't see a weakness on the bench. And that's depressing, especially as I'm going to Arsenal on Wednesday night to see Brighton play. The only hope is that, and I think Arsenal should concentrate on the league, and they should concentrate on the Champions League as well, because they're very lucrative. You only get £100,000 for winning the Carabao Cup. So personally, I play the under-16s because the last thing you want is an injury.
So just for fun, it sort of is a nonsense stat, but just for fun, Arsenal have now got 100 games in all competitions without conceding 3 goals in a single game. The last time an English club did that was Manchester United back in 16-17. So we'd have to guess who the last team to score 3 goals against Arsenal were.
I'll throw in Tottenham.
December 2023, Luton. There you go. Take that with you wherever you are. This has been Beyond the Back Four. Thank you to Graeme. Thank you to Kieran. Thank you to Mark. As always, don't forget to subscribe wherever you're watching. If you are listening to us on a podcast platform, subscribe, give us a follow. If you're watching us on YouTube, get in the comments. Tell us your favourite football fact, because right now, that one is mine. So, that's it. Manchester United breathing down Arsenal's necks after they crushed Brighton. Arsenal continue their grown-up football. Everybody else lost for the most part. And we're all totally neutral about it. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the latest Beyond the Back Four podcast, available on YouTube and all podcast platforms. Subscribe now so you don't miss a single episode.